All right, folks, welcome to the Monsters, Madness, and Magic podcast. I'm your host, Justin, here with a quick word before we dive in. Now, in this episode, I chat with musician and artist Vidarr the Silent about his band Legendry, Sword and Sorcery, painting, songwriting, horror films, record store finds, and more. As always, thank you all for listening out there, and without further ado, here you go. All right, Vidar, take us back in time, man. You're a little kid, youngster. Are you a book reader, fort builder, troublemaker, or all the above?
Yeah, a little bit of all that really. That definitely I built some forts. I lived on the edge of forest, and my dad would bring home wood like pallets and things, and I would drag them all back in the woods and build my own forts and things, and just kind of gather old tires, and it was kind of um a bit of an imagination, imagining all the dried um reeds and whatever were enemies, and going out there with the best stick, and fighting those things. So that was the little kid version of things. But yeah, and did a lot of drawing, lot of listening to music in my room, and made my own comic books and made my own little
Wow.
characters. So it was, the desire to kind of create worlds was, it started very early on, I would say.
Where did you grow up?
South Hills of Pittsburgh area, Pennsylvania, kind of just outside the suburbs. So it was like within an hour of the city, like 45 minutes or so, but there was cows across the street from where I grew up. So it was kind of on the cusp of rural, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. South Carolina here, so I got you.
Mhm.
So, when it comes to fiction and books and stuff, early on, what do you have a genre, or are you certain authors that you lean towards?
I mean, really, it's my family was never really into like fantasy stuff, like I liked the Conan movie, as a kid, but like, my parents weren't really necessarily into fantasy or sci-fi for that matter. They did not like Star Wars. So it was kind of like me getting into those sorts of things happened a bit later. But I mean, really, the fantasy interests come in a lot with like early RPG video games, like Dragon Warrior, NES, and stuff like that. As far as reading, I mean, really, like Lord of the Rings, unsurprisingly, was the first thing I really read. That it was, well, actually, no, I read uh, Narnia, some of the Narnia books as a little kid. Like I think one of my elementary school teachers read us like The Magician's Nephew, and that was
Mm,
like, first fantasy things. But on my own terms, reading Fellowship of the Ring was one of the first things I read, and in The Hobbit before that. And that was right as the movies came out. They like announced the movies as I was about halfway through Fellowship, and at that time, like you didn't want anybody to know that you were reading Lord of the Rings. They would like stuff you in a locker for that, and so I like was hiding it behind a binder, in the library, like making sure nobody saw that I was reading this nerdy crap, because they had like those book covers where they all have the feathered hairdos,
mm.
the kind of Fabio looking, that illustration on the book cover. So it's like, the weird, they were it was you didn't want them to see what was on the cover. So yeah, so that was some early fiction reading.
So you mentioned Dragon Warrior, would you say you're a JRPG fan?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of happenstance getting into the Dragon Warrior thing, because I mean, I didn't really consider where they were from. JRPG wasn't a term that was familiar. Even like, it was just like a medieval fantasy game. And the kind of open world aspects of it were really interesting. I've since gotten into some other RPGs and that sort of stuff, but it was more I think like the Golden Axe games
Yeah.
were like as interesting to me. The immediacy of those, and the music too, especially the Golden Axe games was super cool.
You mentioned that, you write, you draw, and you also write music. Is there anyone else in your family that's creatively inclined? Do you think that's where your roots come from?
I mean, my uncle's a musician, but I mean, for the most part, immediate family, I was kind of, the only one that got that gene or whatever. My parents were always fans of music. There was always a lot of music, playing in the house. There's like an important aspect of life, listening to music, but they were not musicians themselves. There's a lot of blues, a lot of Allman Brothers, Marshall Tucker Band, Dixie Dregs actually was probably the earliest thing. If you're familiar with Dixie
Hmm.
Dregs at all, that was, you know being an 8-year-old kid and being into what's the word jazz fusion is kind of an uncommon thing. But I was Dixie Dregs was one of my like Dregs of the Earth was one of my absolute favorite albums. It still is really, but yeah. So I mean, listening to music, appreciating music, I think is like the maybe the genesis of all of it. No pun intended. I got into Genesis later.
So how early on are we talking when you start, uh, I guess, creating on your own? How early on are you drawing? Do you realize that you can draw?
Oh, I mean, as early as I could hold a crayon, I guess. Now would I say that yeah, all artists are maybe self-conscious about their own work.
Yeah.
I wouldn't claim to be great at anything. I would at most, hope to be competent. But um, yeah, I mean, 3 or 4 years old, and I had my first guitar probably around the same age. And before I knew chords, I was trying to compose my own pieces and that sort of thing. It was there's always a sort of drive to do music and express or create. So
That was what did writing, as in writing fiction, come later, or were you experimenting early on with that as well?
maybe like poetry and things like that in high school. I think that was maybe more interesting. And then in terms of like writing lyrics and things, that that's really where the writing comes in. Is if I want to make these songs tend to have words a lot of the time. Other than the instrumental music like Dixie Dregs, of course. But the writing of prose really comes in as a means to an end, so that I could then base for Legendry, base the songs off of the short stories that I was then writing.
Right.
Because prior to that, I was writing based on Robert E. Howard stories. That like Rogues in the House, a witch is born. Those songs are obviously all Robert E. Howard based. Phoenix on the Blade. Of course, changing the words around a bit to to fit the music. Um,
Hmm.
Even the Samaria thing, like the intro and outro for Mists of Time, is not necessarily, it's not the actual poem from Robert E. Howard. It's a paraphrasing or a kind of reimagining or extension of what he wrote. It's kind of like looking at what he wrote or looking at Samaria from his, through my own eyes at his, creation or something like that. So it's a lot of it is a means to an end, really. The fiction writing.
Gotcha. So just sticking on writing for a second. When you're writing a story, what I know each story can be different, but generally speaking, what does your process look like? You're a heavy outliner. Do you like to go with the flow?
I just sit down and write the story. A lot of it has to do with what music I'm listening to.
Mm,
Like with the whole inspiration to actually do that. I think I was watching like a Rush documentary and saw the Neil Peart writing process. And he had like, for the trees, he had like a little blurb on the top where he wrote down like a little prose introduction or a prose like you know a jumping off point. And I thought that was really interesting that he wrote a little thing to base his lyrics on. And so I paused the documentary and sat down at the computer and was up until about 4 or 5 in the morning, and most of the Wizard in the Tower Keep story was written.
wow.
um so I just kind of went from start to finish there. And I found myself at that point, I listened to Caress of Steel over and over and over and over while I wrote that. So there's like, a lot of that inspiration in it. And Uriah Heep's Demons and Wizards factors into the story as well. Like that, like as he is transported to the realm of iron, spelled Eyrn, but pronounced like metal. So it's, um, as he's transported to that realm, he's listening to Uriah Heep's Demons and Wizards, and it's kind of like close to heavy metal. Where he
Uh,
has the meteorite and he sticks it in his collection and forgets about it, and then electrical storm, etc. So it's somewhat of that, with the actual inner workings of how he gets transported, a mystery, because who cares? It's not, that's not terribly important. The inclusion of songs and things, and like which is close to uh, Stephen King's Dark Tower, like how he includes different references to different music, like ZZ Top drums and stuff like that, and the Ramones and different echoes of the real world. I feel like that makes these fantasy worlds more real. Is like including little little bits and pieces of what you might see or hear or experience in reality. So that's, and anyway, that's what I was, the point I was kind of getting around to, that I wanted to mention, was this inclusion of, the songs that inspire the pieces being part of the stories. So,
Mm. Are you a Stephen King fan?
the only thing I've read of his, honestly, is this Dark Tower series. One of my friends introduced me to the Gunslinger in college, and then I became obsessed. I didn't have much to do in the snowy winters of Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, where you get about 3 feet of snow on the ground. So just I had a lot of time to read. So
Yeah.
I just kind of, in the span of a few months, like 8 months or so, like, considered long books. I read all of them. He wrote one or two more since I stopped reading them, so I need to catch up. But um, yeah, and the King Crimson aspect too. The Crimson King was a big thing with that. Um, so
All of us that love sword and sorcery, we can all point back to the Conan movie, I think. But what would you say was your formal introduction to it, fiction wise? You mentioned Lord of the Rings earlier, but
yeah,
there's a debate there.
yeah. Well, I mean, the as I was saying, the movies didn't really come out before. Like they came out after I'd already, like, been interested in, like, the lore of Lord of the Rings. But I think, like, the Conan movie, like, especially like the really crappy version that's all zoomed in and taped, from television. I think I, like, taped it on a VHS tape, and just how how bad it looked is a part of my memory of it. I mean, like, seeing it in a really nice transfer now is just like, wow, this movie actually looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Very well shot, and everything about it's just great. But, like, the original experience with that, and like Beastmaster, and what else? I mean, there's really not too many. I mean, like, things were few and far between, and like it's like early 2000s ish. Was when I was maybe getting into this stuff, like maybe like late 90s, early 2000s. So the internet wasn't really as broad as it is now. So you couldn't just find this stuff. You would just, like, get a free HBO weekend, and they would, and hey, hey, Beastmaster's on, right?
Yeah.
The HBO acronym thing. And so the experiences with this stuff is, it's very limited, I guess. But I was into it, but only when it was around.
Right. So I think you said you got your guitar when you were 5.
Like three or four, I think my dad brought home a little junky guitar, and I immediately dropped it and broke it. And then I got a slightly better one from my uncle, the only other kind of musician in the family, which was an old Sears Silvertone acoustic guitar that he had kind of refinished or something. And I got a real guitar finally. I think when I was in third or fourth grade. I started taking guitar lessons,
Mm.
and my guitar teacher had he'd come across a guitar that was in the music store had flooded, and it was a limited edition Fender Strat, American made, 1995. And I still have the guitar, of course. That's the one I record everything with. Um, Live, I use the double neck, but yeah, that's so the because it's the double neck.
Yeah,
But
of course.
but for like all of the solos on Time Immortal and all of the guitars on everything else are recorded on that Fender Strat. So
Wow.
it's thoroughly a Fender Strat band. Uh,
So how long after you get, your official guitar, did you want to, did you get bit by the bug to create your own music and maybe even make a band or
oh,
join bands?
I mean, I was creating it immediately. I started writing stuff and recording it with little tape recorders and stuff, and so yeah, it was immediately learning how to write things, and then also learning like Metallica and everything from Slayer, that sort of stuff, as you go through the motions of learning an instrument as a heavy metal kid.
So this is a question I like to ask everyone, man, and just take it whichever direction you want to go with it. What scared you as a kid?
Um, hmm, I don't really just the unknown, maybe, like what's in the shadow, or
Hmm.
what's behind the dark. um I was always really into like Halloween and like typically kind of spooky stuff. I've always been into like horror movies and that sort of thing. And it would be more the psychological, I guess, that would be frightening, or the kind of eldritch unknown, stuff in between. So
What are some horror movies that you grew up on?
um again with that, it's like what was on TV, the like trying to tape all the Friday the 13th, and getting like the TV edits, and then finally seeing them after the fact. I was like wow, okay. Um Texas Chainsaw Massacres, and the second Texas Chainsaw is probably my favorite, but
That's
the
a
Evil
good
Dead
one.
series, Army of, actually, come to think of it now, Army of Darkness, in the fantasy horror sort of crossover that it is, that was a huge inspiration in terms of fantasy stuff. I mean, because that movie, it kind of goes the distance, like it kind of you know I mean, Evil Dead 2, of course, where it goes from the cabin to medieval times, is just incredible. I mean, that amount of coverage. But
Yeah,
yeah, Army of Darkness, huge inspiration early on, especially because there's like six different versions of it that all have different aspects. Like, and actually, the television version is the longest. Like,
that's
because they had to extend it. Like, there's more scenes in the windmill part. When they have the little mirror
yeah.
guys.
That just blew my mind a little because I grew up watching Army of Darkness, but it never clicked with me. You could have a debate to whether that's sword and sorcery or not.
I mean,
Pretty, it's
more
pretty
that than
close.
anything else.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and it is the warrior out of time. Like
yeah.
that sort of thing. Like I mean, the central concept of what I'm doing, and the also with Robert E. Howard, the Elmuric thing, that book, that I think inspires Legendry quite a bit. The Yeah, the boxer that gets transported to the world of Almuric, and that one I think is really neat because he masters the animals of the wild, and then he masters the barbaric race, and then he masters the kind of wizards and the more cerebral peoples of the world. So it's like he kind of rises up from uh, animal to intelligent human, I guess. So
Yeah, and a lot of the best sword and sorcery to me, when I think Carl Edward Wagner, has horror elements in it.
yeah,
And it's all married, really, because I found sword and sorcery through the horror back door because I grew up watching all the Stuart Gordon, H.P. Lovecraft editions. And I thought, when you look on the VHS box and you see H.P. Lovecraft, I thought he was a director because I saw it so many times. I had no idea who he was. And I was like, man, this Lovecraft guy makes a lot of movies.
yeah,
And then I
right.
just started looking into Lovecraft, and then once you do that, you find Howard and everybody else. So
Yeah.
your first band was Defeat, I think. Am I right?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was like the kind of the bedroom black metal era of things. Just kind of figuring everything out, and couldn't find anybody to play drums, so I learned how to haphazardly play the drums, and recorded it all in my mom's basement, basically. But
That's how the best black metal is made.
yeah, I mean, it's, there's a there's some cool melodies in there, but yeah, that was a long time ago now.
Yeah. So give us the legendary origin story. When do you come up with everything and how you guys meet and things get off the ground a bit?
Well, I'd started. I just moved to Newcastle, Pennsylvania, took a job there, and I started working with Chew, our original bass player, and we got together and started jamming. And he said he knew a drummer, and it was Kicker. They went to high school together in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and Kicker came, sat down at the kit one day. We all jammed a bunch, and that was kind of that. I mean, we just started working together on writing songs right away, really. And yeah, just we started with the idea of doing, and this is more my idea with the Hawkwind thing, was kind of like where Hawkwind is space rock, and exploring these long improvised pieces of music. We were doing like a medieval sort of thing, and or medieval fantasy sort of thing, with this, like, as the basis, the um, of the philosophical point of doing this improvised music. So long pieces, like on the initiation rituals demo, there's the one piece, Sky Burial, which we haven't done on anything else up to this point. There's like a melody, and then it's like a 9-10 minute plus, just improvised piece, like we're just jamming. Um, and that's all that was. And actually, Sky Burial was going to be was a potential contender for the name of the band. Then I found some like a hardcore band or something called Sky Burial, and so I'm kind of glad that I came up with Legendary and said I like that a bit better. But yeah, that would be the origin really, and we started writing the songs that were on initiation rituals, and that was recorded. We just put a microphone, it was like a Neumann kind of copy, like a Behringer cheap mic. I still use it actually. It's an okay mic. It's fine, but I just put that in the middle of the room, and we had amps, and we just played the songs until we didn't mess them up too much, and that's how we recorded that demo. It's kind of intentionally not so great because I was also recording Mist of Time at the same time, and I didn't want it to sound too much, dissimilar. Like I wanted it to sound the Mist of Time album to sound better than the demo, so I made sure that the demo didn't sound too great. So anyway, so that's the origin, really.
From Jump Street, was it planned originally for you to do vocals and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, kind of stubborn. It's like if I'm writing the songs, like I want to sing them. Just as in the same way, like I'm gonna write the lyrics too if I'm gonna sing them. So it's kind of like you know, specific sort of a vision, I suppose. To my own detriment. If I got a better singer, then maybe it'd be a more popular band. But
No, no, dude, you're great. You got your own thing
well,
going on.
yeah, it's I mean, but yeah. So that was the plan from the start, and it was really kind of like Manila Road was a massive inspiration to start with this too. So like at the onset of this, like it was like within a few years of starting the band, I had gotten really into Manila Road, and that was actually like how I practiced playing electric guitar and singing at the same time. Because like singing into a mic and standing and playing electric guitar was not something I was familiar with. Like up to that point, like so for a few years prior to this, I was really into like blues and like American folk music, and I was doing a lot of busking. Actually, I would like go down to south side of Pittsburgh, and when the bars would let out, I would play my acoustic guitar and sing outside the bars, and put the case open and try to get people going. And it was actually it was quite a fun time. It was more for the experience and just like getting out there than like making money. But I play a lot of like Lead Belly. I was really into Lead Belly, like Woody Guthrie, like the Bob Dylan kind of stuff. And what else? Playing electric guitar and singing into a mic is a bit of a different activity than like producing enough sound with a guitar, an acoustic instrument, and your voice around people. So I kind of trained myself on a lot of Manila Road songs, and found that like I was producing a similar vocal range and kind of nasal quality to Mark Shelton. So I was kind of interested in that. And so some of the initial stuff that Legendary was doing was we did covered Necropolis on the first album, and had I known that anyone would ever listen to it, I would have covered a different one because like I was already well aware of Visigoth covering it. I just figured nobody would listen to it, so I wasn't worried about doing the same thing. So, and not in any kind of a melodramatic way. I just it just didn't occur to me that anybody would take an interest. So
Well,
anyway,
they
yeah,
did.
yeah, sure.
So when it comes, just songwriting wise, is it you just come up with all the composition, everything, and just bring it to the guys, or is it collaborative at all?
Well, I come up with the concepts and the lyrics and a lot of the time the riffs, but we work together on the compositions. I might like make a bunch of sounds and say, "Kicker, can you play something like like and make a drum sound?" And he'll come up with something better than whatever I come up with, and then we go from there. And then Arcane Hammer, he'll come up with his own lines, and he's always great with it. I mean, and we of course we've had Chew in the band, and then we had Evil St. Clair as well. But yeah, generally everyone's kind of like responsible for their instruments,
Right.
and then if all three of us don't like it, then it doesn't go on the album. Like we all have to agree on what we're playing. There's no parts that I don't really like or that somebody else doesn't really like, at least that I know of. And we intentionally try to make the compositions more interesting. Like we try to stay away from like the typical sort of power metal tuka paka drum beat. We were laughing about that last week, but not that there's anything wrong with the, like Running Wild or anything, but like you know, I'm more interested in some you know, strange drum beats and, you know, doing something a little bit different. So
So when it comes to your aspect of the songwriting, I know each song can be different, but is there a way that it comes to you more so than the others? Does it start with a riff? Does it start with an idea or maybe lyrics or something like that?
um there's a lot of ways that it would occur. I mean, so sometimes, so I'm going to be working on the third and final part of the Earth Warrior cycle soon. I have kind of some vague visions of where it's going to go and what's going to happen, but I just have to get, you know, I have to put all the in between parts. So like I know where he's going to go and what he's going to see, and I have like kind of, you know, vague visions of it. I even kind of know what the album cover is going to look like. But you know, if I have an indication of where the story is going or needs to go while we're writing the music and lyrics, I'll, you know, use that as a kind of a meditation point and then come up with the riffs from there. And other times it's I kind of equate writing to going fishing. You know, you kind of you cast the line in, and if you get a bite, you try to reel it in, and sometimes you get the big one. Sometimes you find a stick. You
Yeah,
know, sometimes
throw it. Yeah, throw it back.
it's an old boot full of water. You know, but really though, I mean, you know, and I know that I'm not the only musician or creator that thinks that way, because it really is like yeah, David Lynch. Like he talks about that a lot. Like, you know, you know how it's like, if you get an idea, you know, and it's I'm not going to do the voice, but
That was pretty good.
like it's find a great idea, and he's absolutely 100% right. If you find a great idea like that, that's the heart, and that's the thing. You keep that like little idea, you know, safe, and you take care of it, and you grow it, and it turns into a beautiful tree or something, you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, so there's a lot of different directions to come up with the songs, but that's you know, that's a few of them, I guess. So
What about not a specific painting, but if you're just painting in general, just curious, not a commission or doing any of your artwork for the albums, does the picture is the picture that you're trying to put on the page, is it in your head concretely, or does it morph over time?
I still think that even the finished ones aren't concrete, and
Mm.
and that's kind of what I'm going for. Like, if I wanted it to look like a photo, I would take photographic references, and I kind of intentionally don't use them as much as I possibly can, and that's a naive quality to them that, you know, while again it's a detractor, you know, I'm really stubborn, and I you know, uh it is like kind of a vision, I mean, the first album in the trilogy was blue, the third or second one was red, and the third one, it'll be yellow. But
You know that already.
yes,
Mm.
so I have the composition in my head as well. So like the composition is there, you know, the details are not, you know, fleshing out the anatomy of the figure, like where's the hand, you know, where's the arm muscles, like that kind of stuff is like, you know, that's the stuff I fight with when I'm making the painting. So yeah, so I mean, that's basically where that lies at. So
But specifically for Time Immortal Web, that album cover, what were you thinking, and what was the process there? How did you put that onto the canvas?
well, there's a couple of things. I mean, I wanted the color scheme, you know, the red, yellow, and violet color scheme. I wanted to experiment with clouds, basically pointing toward the figure. Frank Frazetta, of course, is another name that must be mentioned as far as painting inspiration. He does a lot with skies that kind of like all the composition of the sky comes at the figure. So if you look at the album cover, I'm looking at it, it's just off screen, of course, but all the clouds, all the ground, everything points toward the figure, and I wanted it to look oppressive, and I wanted it to, you know, like he's kind of hunched over, like it's like he's been traveling a long way, and you know, because the atmosphere in this world is different. You know, it's heavy and hot and unpleasant. But yeah, so everything around him is active, but he's kind of static. So that's
Mm. So you did send me over the part one and part two to the impending novella. I don't know how much you want to talk, if you want to put
Yeah,
it out
so
there or spoil anything, or but
I think
just
I've
give
mentioned
folks,
it. Yeah.
yeah, just give folks an idea of what you're going with there and what your eventual plans are for the whole thing.
Well, each the so the part one is the Wizard in the Tower Keep, and that is the album of the same name. Part two is Beyond the Mirrors of Felnock, which I changed the title to Time Immortal Wept, so there wasn't a made up word in the album title. Felnock is the evil planet. So there's Earth, Iron, and Felnock are the three planets. Those things are alluded to in some of the imagery on the album covers, which that I won't reveal exactly. That's a little bit of something I want to keep secret now, but each of those stories is they're like 10,000, 11,000 words. I'm going to write a third and final part of this cycle, and that'll be approximately the same, maybe a bit longer, and then I'll kind of edit them back together, make a few corrections and things that awkward points, or things that I would like to change, because you know I'll have the opportunity to do that at that point. And then I want to compile them back into back together into a novella, and probably do some illustrations for the book and make it more of a full experience. um, a lot of these things weren't exactly planned out from the start, so I'm kind of wanting to go back and kind of put it together. And I mean, the full story was kind of planned in a way. Trilogies are nice, and
Yeah.
like the actual end and how it all comes together is not 100% secured in my head. There are lines of in Time Immortal Wept that allude to the true nature of what's happening to this person, um, but even those are kind of unclear to me. There's mysteries that I'm not sure about either,
I
which is
like that.
part of the charm, I think. Part of
Yeah.
the fun for me too, because it's like I think if I don't know what's going on, then it's exciting for me as well.
You're kind of
So
just walking through the mist and reaching your hand out and seeing what it grabs.
yeah, yeah,
Do you have several different avenues that you could potentially take, or are you just completely just wait until you get there?
yeah. There's some that um yeah, there's definitely a few different possibles. Um, there's a reason I keep using the word cycle, but I'm not sure exactly in what way it will be a cycle. I have a few different things, but I don't want to really expand too much on that at this point. Um, for both for fun and because I'm not exactly sure. I haven't written it yet. So but
So, I don't, if you said this, I'm sorry, but how far along are you with the third part? You just haven't started with it, or
I haven't written anything yet.
okay.
It's there's a lot of visions in my head, and I know that as soon as I sit down, I'll have at least half of it written in a night. But
Hmm.
like there's no sense of writer's block. It's more like I'm kind of getting all my things together to go fishing, and finding a nice peaceful time where I can go and sit by the water and catch the big idea. And like, well, I have the idea. Like, I know where the fish is hiding. I know
Hmm.
exactly where it's living, and I can go there when I want to. But I'm waiting for the right moment. I suppose you could say.
Yeah, I think it's Stephen King that said something along the lines of, it's kind of like going down a dark road at night and you don't have your bright headlights on, you just have the normal lights
Yeah,
on, and you're just going far enough, and you don't really want to see the whole forest.
yeah,
So, I know recently you guys played the Keep It True festival. What
yeah.
was that like for you?
That was that was a uh, pretty powerful experience. Going that far away from home. And that was the first time for me even being in Europe. So going there and just getting off of a train and ending up at the festival and just and seeing Sarah Thungal, and then going to this nice hotel and then coming back the next day and playing the show it was incredible. I mean the it was a very large crowd. It was very well attended. Um, very very nerve wracking. I wore sunglasses so nobody would see that I was not looking into the audience. uh, it's like it's like standing at the edge of a very tall cliff. You don't want to get too close. You don't want to like staring into the void and looking into an audience like that. At least like for me at this like level of an experience. But it was pretty great. Everybody I met was very very friendly. It was everyone was very supportive. That like we I had met a lot of fans. There was people wearing our shirts. They had our patches, and they knew the words to some of the songs. They were like singing along, and the audience is pretty cool. Getting to hang out and meet a lot of people I've like only talked to through emails or what have you, and getting to actually like kind of legitimize those friendships, and just seeing those people. Hung out with Noity for a little while from Manila Road, and we were chatting about things, and he and I had been in contact for years on through email. Like of
Mm-hmm.
course released a heavy metal adventure and reissued some CDs and things like that on Golden Core, and just getting to hang out. It was a lot of fun. So it was a very 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 cool time. Almost everything went well. As we had ordered a banner and had it delivered to the venue, and it arrived an hour after we played.
Oh no.
So we went back to our little dressing room area, and there was a package after we got up back off the stage. It's like, man, like there's the banner.
Fuck.
There it is. Like, yeah. And I was at a DHL pack station, like trying to talk to these bicycle couriers that didn't speak English at all, and like of course, like I wasn't expecting them to speak English, but like they had no idea what I was saying. I didn't know what they were saying, and we're just like, okay, well, we just shrugged our shoulders and went and tried to talk to somebody else. I was so because it was like a German holiday the day before. It was these are the things, the little details that you just can't figure out beforehand. And banner was very nice quality. I can't wait to use it. Uh, you know, it's not going to be in it. There will be a release of some of the footage from that as well. So I don't want to reveal too much on that. Like I have to work on some things with that, but so there will be some like video evidence of it. So that'll be pretty cool.
Awesome. So just sticking with stage in general, do you struggle with stage fright?
It's more just like not really doing it a whole lot. I mean, like the band only does like 4 or 5 shows maybe a year. I mean, like we're not really you know the idea of like a traditional tour is not really something that interests any of us at this point. Like we're all well past our 20s and don't really feel like living in a van, although it would be cool. I don't know. It depends. If the right circumstance like arises, then yeah, we'll do that. But it's more just like I'm not like a natural front person for any kind of a thing. Like I like creating the stuff and like making the stuff on my terms. But um the stage is I'm getting more comfortable with it, but it's not a natural place for me. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of thought for me. I mean, and maybe that's the way everybody is, and only some people ever talk about it. That might be the case, but yeah, it's things that there's stage gremlins. There's something happens whenever the lights are on and you're up there, and things happen that don't make any sense at all. Like words that you've sang 1,000 times, can't remember them.
Yeah.
The guitar that works perfectly stops working. The amp you've never had a problem with, it's making a sound that you've never heard before. It's that way. So you know gradually working out all those bugs with the few shows we do a year is a bit of a challenge, but not that I'll stop doing it. I'm too stubborn to
Yeah.
stop doing it.
So what would you say is the most impactful live show that you've seen as a fan?
um hmm. That's a good question. I mean, seeing Manila Road, I think, was probably like maybe one of the more important things. We played with them and Lady Beast, so Arcane Hammer was there with Lady Beast as well. So like the current band was all played with Manila Road when they came to Pittsburgh. So that was really impactful playing with them. But also just like things like we played Hell's Heroes the first year back after COVID, and watching Sarah Thungle side stage, with a bunch of dudes, and we're watching Candlemass and hanging out with like meeting the people. I think the impactful thing for me is like meeting all these bands at this point, like bands that like I've been a fan of for years, and having the opportunity to meet them on a level of like conversation, and just like and just getting to make a personal connection with these you know kind of mythical figures, and then like it's like realizing they're all just a bunch of really nice musician dudes. It's just very it's encouraging. It's nice. It's just a lot of nice people. That's really all it is. So
Mm. So, you mentioned earlier that you have an idea ahead of time that where you want to go with the next album cover and such. Do you have a similar idea of what you want to do with your eventual novel cover?
Oh, the cover for the book. I don't know. Like no, I haven't really thought about the book cover. That'll come whenever it does. There's other kind of scenes, but there's like one particular point that's going to happen that like I'll want to capture as the album cover. And a side note on that, of course, too, is the gatefold sleeve style of the album artwork. Like I got to figure out what's happening over to the left of whatever the important part is, and then make that interesting too. So
Hmm.
I know what's going to happen on the cover. I got to figure out what's going to happen on the back cover of the album as well. But yeah, I haven't thought about the book cover too much.
I write a little bit myself, and I'm always insanely, my mind is blown, and I'm jealous of people that can write and illustrate their own work. The Death Master does it, and obviously you do it as well. But not to get too deep on you, but I was just talking with what do you think the need to create? What do you think is behind that for you? Is it because just to tell you myself, I think about death a lot, and I think about legacy, and I think about
Mhm.
not being some famous writer or something, but if I'm not here to talk to my kid can pick up a book and read the words that I wrote, and I'm there for a second with them, you know? What's that for you?
I mean, the yeah, I see what you're getting at too, and the legacy is one thing for sure. I don't have any children of my own yet, but um, so for now the music is, but
Yeah,
really though, what it comes to for me, and the reason I want to do it is that I really love art and music, and this is my way of contributing to it. Like kind of giving back to it, like I really like certain aspects of music, so I want to make my own that is similar to that music, or maybe a synthesis of that music. And kind of maybe a dream of mine is just to be a part of the conversation.
yeah,
Like in a literal and figurative way. Getting to actually have conversations with the bands that I like, or the bands that inspired me to make this stuff. Like getting you know to sit at the table, so to speak, is kind of like maybe a goal or a dream, or a reason to be a part of it, just to contribute back, to give back to it. So
cool, man, cool. So, what would you say is the most challenging legendary song to perform live?
I know the Chariots of Bedlam is like, it's actually, that's like one of the first ones we wrote for the new album. We wrote that all the way back in, like, I think it was like 2020. We started writing the riff, the main like 6/8 riff, because it alternates between 4/4 and 6/8 through the whole song. Like it's and that's not that bad, but for me, it's difficult because so I use pedals to do the Hammond organ and the mellotron parts. Like I have a uh, Electroharmonics makes the Mel 9, and I think I have the C9, the B9. There's two Hammond organ ones. I have the one that does the mellotron flutes though, so I can also access that. But I have an A/B switch, and so in the main riff, that I have a Hammond organ part, and then when I go in the singing part, I have to hit another pedal that brings in the choral voices. So I in order to do this right, there's like two buttons, and one is the organ, one is the mellotron, and one's on, one's off, and I have to hit both at the same time with my foot as I start singing and change the riff in order to click it in correctly. And I have to do that like 16 different times in the song. So that's why that one's a hard one to play, is because all the tap dancing I have to do along with it. Uh, yeah, and then I have to remember the words, and then
Yeah, that's another thing.
yeah. So
So one of my favorite songs of you guys is a Sigil Strider. So specifically, how did that song get become? Did it start with just a riff idea typically, or?
that is the only guitar riff I ever wrote in a dream. Woke up and remembered it and went back to bed.
Damn.
And so the main riff came in a dream. So like I think it was like, so I have these like record store dreams. Like I go to record stores, and like I love going to record stores and just the hunt of the things, and heavy metal hunter. And I think it was like it's some scenario like that, or there was a band playing and like they were playing this riff, and I was like, oh no, maybe we should play it a little bit slower, like a slower song, and then, like it's big muscle metal, right? And I woke up and was like, no, I wrote that riff. So I went and like like recorded a video on my phone or just like set it down and then got an acoustic guitar and played the riff, then went back to bed. And so the riff did, it came in a dream. So, and there you have it. Yeah, so it's the only one that was written that way.
what's your holy grail record store find?
There's a lot of weird ones I have. An odd, rather than record store too, it was, there was this website like, and it was like 2001, 2002. It went back when like CD Now was before Amazon bought CD Now or whatever. And it was Music Web, and they had like overstock from like Relativity, Combat Records, Century Media, Century Black, uh what else was the other one, Grindcore Records, and all this obscure crap. And it was all like 2.99, $1.09. It was like all of it was like sub $5. And like I got like a lot of really old weird death metal stuff like Disembowelment, Transcendence into the Peripheral, and like Resurrection, and a lot of like obscure death metal stuff, and like all for like $1 here and there. So I used to like make my mom order it for me from the internet for like Christmas or whatever. So I'd get like 15 CDs or something. It's like, oh, I just want this stuff. But yeah, or like I was just like organizing my cassette collection the other day, and like I have like Dream Death demos. Dream Death was from Pittsburgh, so like some like old demos with like their Xerox fold out sheets and stuff. And yeah, it's a lot of odds and ends. I mean, I've dug through a lot of boxes at the flea market, and found some cool stuff like so. Um,
Uh, is it your behind you is kind of dark? Are those records or are those books?
those are all CDs.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So
Okay.
if I turn it a little bit, there's quite a few over there. I
Wow.
think it's around 1,500, and then below that's records, and then I have another 350 cassettes to my right here.
Wow, man.
That's
See, I used to really collect VHSs, and I lost them all
Oh yeah,
in a house fire, and I just haven't had the guts to start all over again.
yeah. That I'm sorry to hear that, of course, but the VHS, that I bought a whole IKEA cabinet just to hide all my VHS tapes. I have around 750 of them. Like, so there was a point where I was in college, and everyone was like liquidating all their VHS, and like I didn't have. I was like stealing internet from like my neighbor, and like I didn't. There was no streaming service to speak of, so I had like I could watch movies. So that was my like video entertainment. So I would go to every flea market and secondhand store and just load up on VHS. It was like 10 for $1 at that point. So a lot of obscure horror. I don't have like, there's no commons in there. There's no Titanic and like Speed. There's a lot of weird stuff. Like, and there was like actually in Pittsburgh there was a record store that it was it something strange video or something like that, and they would like they specialized in like horror movies and like Viking metal. It was like the coolest store ever, and they got like that's where I discovered like Pagan Altar. Like they just had casual Pagan Altar CDs on the rack and stuff like that. But when they closed, unfortunately, it was like a hobby sort of business for the owner. Like he ran it like he had like a full-time job, and then just ran the store as like something a way to supply his habit of buying music and whatever. But they're so I got a bunch of like obscure like Japanese horror and just really weird stuff. Like I don't think I've even watched all of it. It's but I just loaded up some grocery bags with like like ultra violent anime and just weirdo stuff. Like so, yeah. The VHS collection, that's something that I kind of need to part with it because I haven't opened that cabinet in 3 years. So I bought the cabinet so I didn't have to look at all of them, and they're just packed in there. It's So anyway,
If you start selling them, hit me up, man.
oh
You
yeah,
might be able to
know,
talk me
yeah,
into it. My heart yearns for the old mom and pop VHS
oh I know.
stores because that's where I grew up. That was my jam.
Yeah, that's I mean that's still like when you find a good one, like where I'm at, like there's not really anything. Pittsburgh's kind of yeah, kind of lame at this point for that. I was down in Texas over the summer, and there was some in near Austin, and there were some pretty great record stores there. So I definitely spent way too much on cool things.
Obviously, man, I got a lot of fans of the show are sword and sorcery readers. We all know the Robert Howards and whatnot, but is there an a sword and sorcery writer or a specific story that's a bit underrated or overlooked that you would recommend to folks out there?
I mean, there's also like there's the John Norman stuff, like the Gorian subculture, like notwithstanding or whatever, you know the 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 kind of weirdness of that, like and also the Italian productions of the two films for like Outlaw of Gore and Gore, like
I'm not familiar with those.
they're horrendous. Like the what's the actor? Oh, the main the guy who plays Tarl Cabot was he was also in Demons. Like
Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
no
yeah.
demons.
Oh, I think he's got some, like, I forget the guy's name. He's but he's got this curly blonde hair. It's hilarious. But yeah, so I mean the John Norman stuff a little bit. But I don't know. Maybe I got to do my homework. I'm not. I'm more of a music nerd than I guess I am. You know, anything else. I mean, and the Barbarian movies too. Of course, I've seen all of them. I found out like everyone like the Deathstalker films too is another thing that just fantastically bizarre. And also Mystery Science Theater, to mention Deathstalker, and they did do Outlaw of Gore early into that. The There's a YouTube channel that like has these TV broadcast editions where they have all the commercials from like like the Comedy Channel era, and so that's the choice way to watch them, I would say.
That you
It's
need the old
historic.
school commercials.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's like historically accurate. It is. It's just somebody's VHS transfer. It's just great. But anyway,
So, near the end here, I like to ask everyone this question: have you ever had an experience that you would consider supernatural, paranormal, or an event you can't explain?
um, yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, like when I was like a teenager, I was really into like trying to photograph like orbs and stuff in cemeteries, and I definitely photographed some like kind of ectoplasm, sort of like screaming faces and things. And this there was a cemetery near where I grew up that was a it's like Revolutionary War, Civil War era, sort of like it was like at least 150-year-old graves, and they were like they like rediscovered it in the forest with like something they like kind of cut the trees down and put the tombstones back up. So there's like some of the tombstones were there, but like most of it was like these hollows where the caskets had collapsed. And so we used to go there a lot, and on Halloween and stuff, we're wearing corpse paint as you do as like a kid that's into black metal, and like try to record ghosts. And I did actually record some like weird voices on a cassette tape, and some some of it might have been pollen, some of it might have been dust or mist or whatever, but there was definitely some unexplainable aspects to it, and just you know yeah, I would definitely say that there's more than the world that we can see. you know Things coming to you in dreams, and whatever, like certain dreams are more vivid than others, the astral plane sort of aspects. And there's something um to it. I don't believe that there's nothing. So
Do you consider yourself religious or spiritual or anything along those lines?
um you know I feel like the older I get, the less I know.
Hmm.
So I just kind of take things for what they are. And you know just maintain an awareness that I know very little.
Hmm.
So being open to possibilities. I would say, like, the yeah, not in like a traditional sense, but like, yeah, definitely there's a spirituality to it, but um no true definitions in there. So
Just to put a bow on this thing here, man, is there anything on the horizon you want to share? Anything coming up? Anything you want to promote?
well, as I said, that well, we'll probably do some uh release in some form for the video captured at Keep It True. I don't want to say too much about it because I've not had a chance to really get down to editing and taking a look at what everything, what it looks like, yet. But it'll either be a full concert or a few videos from it, and I'd love to do a VHS tape release. I think that would be really just
That'd be cool.
yeah, that'd be kind of cool. And I mean, as far as a band, like we're kind of at a point where now we don't have anything specific on the horizon. So now we're writing. That we actually started on some new riffs just last Saturday, kind of structural stuff for a potential song. So and that was just an improvisational thing that we just like let's just like start jamming and see what happens here, and we came up with a group of riffs that I think sound pretty cool together. So yeah, it's really the writing of the next album, and there's enough information to base it on that I think that it'll go pretty well. I mean, I would say my goal is maybe by this time next year, I hope that we are recording it. So it does take time. So
Yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah.
there's no way around that. You can't just rush these things. So I mean, like Time Immortal Web took a few years to put together. Somewhat unintentionally, we have like I said, in 2020 we had like some of the first songs written, but in any case though, yeah, the horizon is basically what how does it end, how does the whole trilogy come together. So and then what
Awesome.
do we do after that?
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, I hope that's not just the end.
No, well, I have another secret for that's an even bigger secret that I've told one or two people, and they're like, oh yes, okay. So that we'll see if that even comes to light. If it doesn't, I'll talk about it then. But yeah, I have some plans on two albums out. Basically, is kind of where I'm at with that. So
Awesome. Well, Vidar, it's been great talking to you, man. I thank you for giving me some of your time. Big
yeah,
fan.
thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. So
Have
yeah,
a great night, man. Appreciate
yeah,
you.
good. Yeah, thanks.